What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another really cold driving video. So currently my display is saying it is -7 Fahrenheit outside. I'll put Celsius on the screen for our Celsius friends. Earlier this morning it was actually -10 Fahrenheit, which I didn't really expect it to be this cold. It's really cold out, and I'm glad I charged to 90%. Sometimes I don't charge up that much, but I wanted to share with you today some extreme cold weather driving, because it really does affect the range of the battery, especially when you get this cold. This, for my area anyway, is pretty ridiculous. We do maybe see this once or twice a year, but you can go years without seeing these temperatures. So when you order a Model 3, it says it has, mine said 310 miles of range when new, and that's based off of an efficiency number, watt hours per mile. So for me, for my car, it was based off of about 240 watt hours per mile. It's kind of like your gas mileage, except you want this number to be lower. That means your car is more efficient. So if my car is getting 240 watt hours per mile, it will go about 310 miles. Well, as you can see here, we are getting close to double that at 407 watt hours per mile. And that has a lot to do with temperature, mostly, and speed is actually a bigger factor. But when you get to these really low temperatures, it does really zap your range. So we can just make a quick guess and say my battery is only going to go about half as far as it would on a normal, say, 70-degree day if I was going the same speed. So what can you do if you're in this situation? Now, I'm just going to work and going home. I do drive about 70 miles for that trip, but what if you're in a situation where, okay, the car is making its own lane change here. If you're in a situation where you're using this much energy, I mean, this is crazy, it's a lot of energy, and you're making a longer trip, what can you do? Well, the first thing, of course, is to slow down a little bit. So if I slow down, we'll see probably a little bit later, this number will drop and my efficiency will get better. But what you can do is you can actually look at the energy graph here, and you can see this is my 30 miles range. So my average for the past 30 miles is 420 watt hours per mile, which is, again, getting pretty close to double the rated efficiency, which would mean I would get half the range. So my projected range right now, even though I'm at 75% battery, is 128 miles. So that is really dramatic. Let's say I needed to make 2 trips today. I definitely would have to stop somewhere and charge. If I had to make a longer trip and go out of my way before going home, it would be a concern for sure. So when you have these really cold days, you do have to plan ahead. You want to make sure you have charging available to you wherever you go. So changing back to pass these slower vehicles. So as we'll see as the drive goes on, this number should go down a little bit because I've been going pretty fast. I'm going to try to slow down. Now, the other thing you can do, you definitely want to have your seat heaters as high as possible, because they do not use much energy at all. All of this heat that's being generated is going pretty much directly into my body since I'm sitting on the seat. So the other big thing you can do is turn your heat down. Now, I'm going to be totally honest, even with 72, I have my full coat on, my hat, I have everything on. 72, it's pretty cold in here, and I actually kind of want to turn it up, but I'm not going to do it for the purpose of the video. If I wasn't making a video and trying to lower this number a bit, I would probably be turning that up to maybe 75 or so. But if you're in a pinch and you are not sure you're going to make it, of course, you'll be a little cold. So we can turn it down even a little bit more. But this air, like around here, my hands are pretty cold. Really wish I had that heated steering wheel that's in the newer cars. And so, yeah, the cold is just really overwhelming. And I think, you know, in any vehicle, if you had your heat lower, you're going to be cold in there. It's just going this fast, this much wind, this much cold, -8 Fahrenheit is extremely cold. So this is not dangerous for the battery. Some people will think that. I forget the exact temperatures. I will put it on the screen. Tesla has recommendations on their website for as cold as the battery can be, and that's sitting unused for 24 hours. It's basically, you don't want to, I want to say it's about around -30 Celsius, whatever it is, but you basically don't want to let the battery sit at that temperature for 24 hours. Anything higher than that, the battery can sit, and the best thing to do is be plugged in, because the battery can control its temperature, it can warm itself, it can heat itself, and you could do that too by preheating it and just keeping the heat really low. So we can see we've went down 1 watt hour per mile so far, but of course it's an average, so it'll take a while. If we look at our last 5 miles, you can see now this number is lower, 393, versus the last 30 miles was 402. So our average is lowering as we move along at this lower speed, with a lower temperature in the car. Now 406, 405. And efficiency changes dramatically with speed. So if, again, I was in a pinch and I was worried, I could lower this down even more to 70 or even 65. That would save a dramatic amount of energy. Now, I don't really feel like going that slow, to be totally honest, but if I was in a pinch, that's what I would do, and you would gain a significant amount of miles. So based on our last 5 miles average, we are going to make it 135 miles. Based on our last 30 miles average, we'll make it a bit less than that at 129 miles. So here's what we're gonna do. Let me actually lower my speed for a bit because I do wanna demonstrate this. I'm gonna get over here, which, to be honest, yeah, the car did that on its own, even though I did hit the turn signal. So I'm gonna get this out of the way. I'm gonna turn this off so the car will not change lanes anymore and bring our efficiency back up. And I'm gonna lower our speed down to 70. And we'll see how that affects the range. All right, so it's been a few miles at our lower speed here, and you can see our average has dropped for the last 5 miles down to 351. Our average for the entire trip has dropped down to 398. My projected range is 144, 143, which is actually more than I had earlier. Even though I'm driving, I'm using the battery, the distance total I'll be able to go has increased. We're at 71%. I was, again, at 89%. So I went from 89% down to 71% in 28.7 miles. So that's pretty crazy still. Again, if this was kind of an emergency situation, I wasn't sure I was going to make it to my destination, I would lower the speed even more, really as much as I needed to, safely on the highway. I might get off the highway, whatever you need to do. So again, in daily driving, it doesn't really matter too much so I don't really care about my range because I'm just going to go home tonight and plug in and charge back up. But these are the things you can do if you're ever in that situation. Now, if you're road tripping and it's -7, yeah, you're going to have a bad time. You're really going to have to plan ahead with your supercharger stops. Make sure you arrive with significantly more energy than you plan to. So you can see as I increase my speed, see how much this went up. I just lost 10 miles of range just from that quick increase in acceleration there. Now, of course, this will dip back down because the acceleration used a lot of power. But yeah, speed is a huge power sink. The biggest one you can really control in your car. So yeah, on a road trip, if it's -7, you're really gonna have to plan ahead. The car will take temperature into account, which is very important. So it knows, of course, like we're seeing here, that I'm only gonna make it a certain distance. Again, if we look at our last 30 miles, I'm only gonna make it 126 miles. With 70% of my battery left, I'm only gonna make it 126 miles, which is pretty crazy. But the one big thing to keep in mind, when you have these crazy temperatures, usually it's not too windy, but around the temperature, right before it gets this cold or after it gets this cold, it's really windy. The car is not very good at taking headwinds into account. So as you drive, it'll kind of collect that data. But again, you got to be careful with that with your planning ahead. Now, don't get me wrong, gas cars will also lose a lot of range when it gets this cold out. Now, not as much range, but they can go to just the gas station, right, and just fill up in 5 minutes. So it doesn't matter as much for a gas car. But one of the biggest advantages you'll have in an electric car is you don't have to use a starter. And so these cold temperatures are not going to keep the car from starting. So you will not have a problem. It could be -10, -20. The car's going to start right up because it's just a battery. Whereas in a gas car, I mean, I've definitely had mornings here in Michigan where I simply couldn't go anywhere because my gas car could not start because it was just too cold for the starter and I couldn't get the engine started up and I had to wait until it warmed up or just not go anywhere that day. I mean, I have had days like that in the past, whereas this car will never. All right, I'm going to get out of that guy's way. This car, oh, there was somebody on the side there, will never have that problem of not starting just from the cold temperatures, although it does lose a lot of range. And then the last thing I'll mention, which is every car, so you should pay attention to this no matter what, of course your tire pressures are going to go down. Now these were much lower when I started. They were all in the 30s, but these extreme temperatures can kind of catch you off guard sometimes. So be ready for that. This tire needs a little air. It's been too cold. I don't care enough to add air to it, and it's been fine. So anyway, that's cold weather driving. You can see we're warming up a bit here, -4 now, getting pretty hot. So that is all. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you learned something. If you have any more questions about cold weather driving, winter driving, leave them down in the comments. I will be happy to answer those, and you will see me in the next video.
So Autopilot and I are happily driving along.